Right, we're going to get started now, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, everybody ready? So welcome, good afternoon. Yes, I am the Brit with the British accent. And I'll talk about myself in a little bit, but I'm really excited to be here with some real experts, not only in the use cases we're going to be talking about, but XR in general. So it's been my pleasure meeting these people and listening to what they've done. But really today, we're going to be talking about virtual collaboration and meetings and the kind of multiple mini use cases within that as well. So what we're going to focus is on what problems they're actually solving, what benefits these companies and these individuals have been getting from and realizing from delivering these kind of solutions. And also the third chestnut, what challenges they've had to overcome to do it as well, and what challenges they're still overcoming. Okay, I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. And please, people at the back, come forward. There's loads of seats at the front. A little bit about myself. My name is Mark Sage. For people who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of the AREA, which stands for Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. We're a global membership-funded, not-for-profit alliance helping to accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. And I see lots of familiar friends and members here as well. And if you are interested and you're still looking to deploy the technology, please come and speak to me. Have a little booth out there, 905 as well. So I want to just show of hands before we get going. Who is using XR applications and platforms for virtual meetings now? Hands up. Okay. How about for virtual collaboration? Hands up. Okay, same bit. Now then, the question is a kind of a subset one, but how regularly are you using the tools? And my definition of regular, and you can use whichever one, but it's at least once a week. Hands up again. Yeah, hands gone down quite a bit less. Okay, all right. Well, keep that in mind because we're going to be talking here about what these guys have been doing, and I want your questions and feedback and stuff like that. So, these beautiful people here. What I'm going to do is ask them to introduce themselves. I'm always really interested. I get to speak to people all over the world, but I'm going to ask them how they got into immersive tech as well. Lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ideas and what people get in. So I'm going to start with Elliot at the end. Welcome, Elliot.
This working? Oh my God. Okay. Right. So let's try that one more time. Hi, everybody. My name is Elliot Drake. I'm currently the XR Technical Product Manager for GSK's US R&D functions. Currently, the main areas that we're working on within XR technology at the moment is bringing holographic technology into sterile areas for just like laboratories, HIV research, areas like that. I've been working in the XR space, for my first HoloLens back in 2016, 2017. So kind of was doing it back for undergrad, but bit of a break in that. And then I've been at GSK now for about 2 years. So been in it for a bit and I love what I do. So yeah.
Okay, Vinay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Vineet Kamboj. I'm a UX designer at Schlumberger Technology Innovation Center. We also call it STEC, and we are based in Menlo Park, California. So as an innovation group, we look out for like new latest technologies and experiment with them, try them out, and basically design, build, prototype as proof of concepts to bring innovation and to solve challenges in the energy sector. I primarily work on projects involving immersive technologies and also ensure that whatever we do is by using a user-centric approach. And about how I got into immersive tech, a bit of a story time here. So I did my undergrad in architecture design, and as my final thesis project, I decided to design a museum which would showcase the emerging technologies, like a place where you can actually go see, get a sneak peek of the future. And other than designing the building itself, I was also looking into how would people actually experience those exhibits in the museum. And it was just the right time. It was early 2015, and the news about HoloLens 1 just hit the internet. And that got me inspired, and I went down the rabbit hole, learned about AR, VR, and most important, like it made it into my design concept, but most importantly, once I graduated, I made a career pivot, went to school to learn human-computer interaction design, and focused on immersive technologies. And it's been 7 years since then. And I'm really counting on this technology, so better pay off.
I'm Nick Castillo. I'm with Raytheon Technologies. My specific business unit is Raytheon Intelligence and Space, and I work with the Immersive Design Center. I'm the founding three of the Immersive Design Center, bringing this tech in. I started as a draftsman, really trying to get 3D to move forward, right? Everybody was designing in 2D still in blueprints. Yes, that means I've been around a while doing this. And so, pardon me. So I have started pushing 3D on everybody that I could to make sure that we could start doing what we needed to do with it, from bridges and design all the way through. I got interest from the original two who were starting the Immersive Design Center, got pulled in, started using cave technologies. But before we could get a cave, which is large scale, we were walking around proselytizing with a 55-inch screen with some motion capture cameras on it, and going to schools and going everywhere we could to get that technology pushed forward. So I've been doing this quite a while. I also have a background in media arts and animation, so I'm a content creator. I make all kinds of things, which automatically meant that I knew how to do photography and videography, right? But that's what I do as well now. I'm a 360 videographer, and I also do laser scanning as a side job. And so I'm the company SME for laser scanning, and so that is not only terrestrial but also a near range as well. So I'm trying to get more into some photogrammetry as well, but I have people that I know to do that.
Awesome. Is mine working? No? Is this working? Okay, cool. So my name is Dane Laughlin. I work for Invista, which is a global polymer intermediates company. And my XR journey actually started with the Google Cardboard a while back, if anybody remembers those. I remember, taking, I think it was actually like a goodie that came in like at a zoo or something like that. It came in a goodie bag, unfolded it, put your phone in it, and got to see the space shuttle. And now I'm actually the product leader for XR within Invista, and kind of work across the different businesses at Coke, which is our holding company. And since we've focused on how do we train people more effectively, how do we increase the connection, especially in times of COVID and the last couple of years that we've had. And so that's kind of been our focus. And another thing is, how do you take people who traditionally wouldn't be like, don't have a computer science background, for instance, and allow them to contribute in the XR space as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Miranda Palmisano, and I'm currently the Connected Worker and XR Immersive Technologies Product Manager at Chevron. So I've been with Chevron for about almost 9 years now. And my first experience with XR technologies was actually in 2019 with the HoloLens. So I just got in a new role. I was their downstream business relationship manager. And during that time, all of the feedback that I was getting was actually pretty negative about the HoloLens. So it wasn't a positive experience at first. But over time, we learned to listen to our customers and kind of adapt with the challenges that they were having. And then about a year after that, I was placed into a new role after our large transformation that took place within the company. And I was the Connected Worker product owner. So in that role, I was gifted with supporting the HoloLens. So once again, I had that technology and I got to support it for the enterprise. And then I would say probably 8 months after that role, we kept hearing over and over again, hey, what are we doing for virtual reality? So it was coming to us from all these different stakeholders that were field workers. And over time, we listened to their feedback and we basically put together a proposal for our management saying, hey, we don't do something, 8 different groups across Chevron that are going to go ahead and implement something, and they're probably all going to be different solutions. So there was definitely a lot of pull or push from our end users. And oddly enough, within a week, we had our new team formed, which is the XR Immersive Technologies team. So we have a little bit of we have a tie-in back to Connected Worker, but we're really focused on the enterprise, including not only our field-based workers, but also our desk-based workers, which I'm excited to talk about the virtual collaboration today. So since April of this year, we've really been on our journey for kind of understanding the foundation. We've been partnering with our Accenture team over here in that table. And so throughout that experience, we've been putting together our target architecture, and really just understanding our users and what they need and what the highest impact will be across the organization.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. So we've got artists, architects, engineers, and all sorts of mixed bags in between. So I think it's a really interesting point from my perspective. anybody with a background can come into the technology, and as long as they're passionate for it, they can make it work. So thank you very much. We're going to focus on that particular use case I mentioned before, which is actually a big use case, virtual collaboration in meetings. We're going to try and unpack that a little bit. I'd just like to ask simple questions to let these guys talk about it. So really simply, what problems are you solving using virtual collaboration in meetings and things like that? So Miranda, I'm going to start with you this time.
Okay. So for us, I know when we think about virtual meetings and collaboration, it's a little bit more squishy. It's not as tangible as like VR training or some of these other use cases that we're deploying across Chevron. So really the two problems that I think we're focusing on right now is we have a very large global organization. People are everywhere. And if you go talk to people in Australia and China and Thailand, Kazakhstan, wherever they might be, it sometimes feels like a very Houston or US centric company. And that's because all of our large scale events, everything that's happening usually happens in the US. So I think we have a really great opportunity to use this type of technology to bring people together and have these geographically dispersed teams be able to interact with each other and feel a sense of presence. And then the second challenge or problem that we're trying to address, we were actually on site. My team was on site back in April at our El Segundo refinery. And during that time, we were just doing a deep dive with some end users, some operators, some leaders in management. And we started asking them the question around virtual reality and if they would see benefits of using it. After putting the device on their heads, we were actually really surprised because a lot of the operators that were going through that new operator training, they were looking at us like we were crazy. They were like, why don't we have this? The people down the street have it. They've been using it for 4 years now. So that kind of really opened our eyes to the problem around the next generation is expecting this technology. Similar to mobile computing. And if you think back 10 years ago with texting and all the things that were happening with mobile computing in your smartphones, I think it's going to happen with XR as well in the future.
Thank you, Miranda. Elliot.
So one of the major areas that we've been working on, being with pharmaceuticals, we are very highly regulated when it comes to global travel, especially during COVID. So some of the major areas that we were able to use, remote collaboration, virtual meetings, things like that. Probably the biggest one was doing like international engineering audits. So like if we needed to, for example, you are a regulatory facility that's based in Maryland, and we had a PBD area based in Athlone, Ireland, I believe. We needed to make sure that we had like engineering supervisors from Maryland able to actually coordinate with all the folks over in Ireland and make sure that they could do everything within a certain period of time. They could write down all the audits if there were any issues or near misses or anything that they were doing to like a certain level of standardization. Like it was marked and it was just good to go for like FDA audits or anything like that. So just making sure that we had kind of the connectivity to make sure that they could all interact with each other and just without having to worry about it, whether or not it be depending on which devices you use, no matter which device that they were using, that they could make sure that they were communicating and everything was getting through clearly. So that was probably our biggest one. Just that's one example, but we have facilities all over the world, so we could do it fairly often.
Fantastic. Annette?
Okay. Yeah. So at Schlumberger, we do have like a lot of different use cases we've been trying to solve using virtual collaboration and virtual meetings. But I would point out one of these use cases wherein we had to allow these multidisciplinary teams of domain experts, which includes geologists, petrophysicists, reservoir engineers, well construction engineers, who are working on a specific field, and allow them to share and visualize these large subsurface models during their field review meetings. These subsurface models are typically created in Schlumberger's legacy software called Petrel. And the main problem was that these Petrel projects were so huge that it was hard for them to like share within the team. So it used to sit on one system. Whoever is working on the project currently, he used to like own the project and they cannot share it. So every time they had to like do this field review meeting, which happened weekly or bi-weekly, either the person who is supposed to present would drag that beefy CPU because it needs a big GPU. They would drag that CPU to the meeting room and hook it up on a screen and share that 3D and 2D information. Or if they're feeling lazy, they're just gonna take screenshots and throw them in a presentation, and there it goes. So After that, like when COVID hit and everybody started working from home, that became even more complicated because we all have like seen how videos and how 3D software sort of behave during the screen sharing on these video calls. The frame rate is very choppy, and if you want to like, oh, could you navigate it over there? And there's gonna be lag, and ultimately you'll never see the perspective you're trying to see in those meetings. And yeah, it hampers the collaboration, hampers the communication as well. So that's where we saw like that it is a great opportunity for which VR can sort of take care of. And we created at our innovation center, we created a prototype, which was basically a proof of concept that whatever data resides in Petrol, we can actually bring it inside a virtual session in VR, and everybody can join irrespective of if others have a Petrol software running on their system or not. They can join in, and then they can like collaborate, they can do their design review thing, and especially after they are done working in this VR session, the person who is supposed to take all that feedback is not only like, it's going to be like, oh, whatever we did there, it was good, but now I have to go back to my system. They can actually extract all that information which was generated in the session, bring it back, and then they can continue working on their Petrol project based on the feedback they got in the session. So that's one of the major use cases we have been working on lately. Other than all the engineering design audits and all that, this is the one use case we have been trying.
Thank you. Nick?
See if this will work. All right. Oh, now it's on. Guess what? It's on now. Okay. So we in the Immersive Design Center try to host a whole design review meetings, engineering design review meetings in 3D, stereo, trying to use normal engineering tools. Right? We have, like we said, we have the SAPs, we have the PTCs. We want to keep using the definitive source of truth. We don't want to try to translate it into something else and then bring it in. And now we take notes on that, and we put metadata into that, and then where does that go, right? Who's gonna take that data and move it back into our normal flow? It doesn't make sense. So we try to stay in our current engineering tools as much as possible. It means we need to have a scribe on site, or in virtual we can telestrate, we can do all that kind of stuff to be able to take different types of notes, taking advantage of like OneNote and things that people don't really use in their normal Cs, right? Just using the same tools we already have, but just making people aware of them and making it live and editable right away, right? That helps with the dispersion of teams, right? But we also have like things that I was just thinking about when you were talking right now is what if the computer shut off and we're all at home and we need to remote into that computer? Do we have our security systems in place that we can actually turn that thing back on remotely, or do we have to now drive in and we can't because we're off site now, or we're in another country? How do we help solve those security issues that things you wouldn't think is going to be a problem just pop up all the time? But we also have found issues like with remote inspection. We had folks who, during COVID, we'd pass a camera to them. We'd give them the tools to go in and solve it for themselves. And then they'd get over there and just say, okay, can you move to the left? And they'd move to the right. And can you zoom in? And they'd back up. And you're like, no, can you just, and it hampered the conversation, right? The technology wasn't assisting as much as you would think. So we decided, okay, what if we give the tool to the end engineer, and they can actually take an Xbox controller or even just a keyboard and mouse and use a robot arm to control the camera, and just straight up engineering tool controls, right? That's easy stuff. But you have to make sure that's all through your security systems, and you're not streaming bad data. And how do you get that cleared on our systems, without NDAs and everything else that we're doing, and having enough security in place to make sure that we're doing it the right way. We didn't just jump in and say, we're going to just, here's the tool. We made sure that we went through the robust security to make sure that we were going to continue to be trusted to make these solutions when we were doing it as well. So there's a lot of barriers in it, but we have to make sure that we're thinking of those simple things as well as the hard ones when we're doing this.
Just to be clear, can you hear Nick when he's speaking? Yeah, we probably just need to get a bit closer. Yeah, Dane?
Yeah. So I would say that our journey in this space is really about how do we connect people globally so that our subject matter experts can talk to sites that may leverage them. In a traditional sense, you would send somebody on a plane to a site, they would help for a couple of days, they'd fly back. And now, if you think about COVID and other things going on in the world, we don't have the opportunity to fly places like we traditionally might. And also there's the embedded costs and all these different things. And so we think about that like it's kind of stranded talent, right, at these various places where people are, but they might not be able to be accessed by the people that need them when they need them. And so the biggest use case for us in this kind of multiplayer ish, if you consider that also collaboration, is can I have a trainer in China that trains the team in Europe? And instead of traditionally where like I'm going to go through the VR training, it'll send off the analytics, somebody else can look at the analytics and tell me what I did wrong, asynchronously give me feedback, and then do all these different things. Instead, you could have two people jump in. If you have a question, you hand the tool over to the trainer that's with you virtually. They show you how to do it. They hand the tool back, and you continue to do work. And so I think a lot of how we leverage these technologies also is, how do you fit that into how people traditionally work? If you think about how a trainer, trains an employee, a lot of times they are walking out with them on the manufacturing floor and they're showing them, this is what this does. This is how you work this particular piece of equipment. And so if you can mirror that in a digital space, you can do this, you're not localized to the area that you are at. And so that's a really important aspect of this. We call it, presence at a distance. So, can you have the ability to feel present with somebody, have a conversation, build relationships, learn from them, and then also, presence in the form of I'm standing in front of the same pump that the other person, next to me is talking about, and we can have those kind of mutual discussions on the same foundation of 3D space.
And when we first started talking about this, and I've been lucky enough to, as I mentioned, speak to this group for a while, we say, well, it's virtual collaboration and meetings. You automatically think of just meetings and team meetings. But we've already got here a bunch of different use cases, from remote audits to design reviews to virtual inspection. And this kind of all gets bundled into these meetings, but they're making some real business benefit. I think the other thing is we talk about COVID a lot, and it's actually been a driver, as we all well know, for XR. But we're never going back to people traveling around the world like we did before. Okay, companies now have lost that money. So we've got to make this technology work and work even better, because that money is never coming back. Okay, so which is great, which takes me on to the next kind of question. And if you ever listen to any of my panels, I normally just focus on three things: problems, benefits, challenges. All right, so I always call this show me the money. Show me the money. Okay, so what benefits have you been experiencing? And more importantly, I think because there's an audience here of experts as well, how have you gone about measuring it, or how are you planning about measuring it? I know some of you are partway through your journey as well. So I think, Vinit, if I could start with you.
Yeah, so when we started working from home, our team was tasked with, trying out all the different design review applications out there and all the meeting applications out there on different platforms. And the idea was to try them out, understand which one's better, which one's like, what do they provide us, and how are they actually different from the meetings we are doing either in person or through Teams and Zoom and all those things. More like a comparative analysis study. So definitely there were a lot of benefits. And to begin with, one of the benefit we saw, which is like people were more, so we have done various evaluations. Mostly at this point, we have done qualitative evaluations and less of quantitative. Quantitative is something we are looking into doing as we go. But in qualitative analysis, we understood by surveys and by also observing while people were in these meetings that the presence factor was getting strong. Once people were out of these VR meetings, we took surveys and we asked them questions. And especially since we were doing this study while we were working from home, and when they saw their like fellow colleagues sitting next to them, they just felt nice, felt good about it. That it felt like I was with my colleagues, I was with them. Another factor which was like attentiveness. People were way more attentive in VR meetings than they were on Teams calls. I'm sure like everybody over here has been guilty of this thing, that where you turn off your video and mic and make sure that the food on the stove is not burned, right? So yeah, and since people are more attentive, they also are able to recall what was done in the meeting better, and all this finally basically increases the productivity of the employees, right? So that was one factor when I talk about meeting. Whereas in terms of collaboration, simply like when from my previous example, the project was on just one system. So every time they had to collaborate, either the person had to walk all the way to their system, or now since they were working from home, they were just trying to figure things out on video call with screen sharing. And it was like very hard for them to work like that. And people started working in silos because like it's too much to deal with. Yeah, I just do my part, then I send over the stuff I've done, then he will review, she will review, and come back with feedback. So the cycles became longer and longer. And then we saw like with VR collaboration tools, it was much easier. Yes, they have this wow factor when they come in, but we also were looking like, is there a reason for them to come back to this application later on? Or why would they come back? And we were looking at numbers, and yes, there was an increase in numbers, especially when their workflows, when the application actually fit into their workflows, they were coming back again and again to work on these VR design tools or VR design review tools. So that's something we saw very benefiting to us.
Perfect. Thank you. Nick?
I'll build off of what he said. I believe the attentiveness is, as you were saying, is what is really being captured. People aren't on the phones. They're not distracted, and because of that, like you said, you're getting more participation, more recall, and I am a big user in the space, but I say that meetings are very costly, right? Imagine how many people are in this room. How much does this cost to have, to put this on, right? So if we're going to do that, we have to make it as effective as possible. We have to make it as engaging as possible. If we can shorten the time of the meeting because everybody got it, great, right? We don't need to have that time held up the entire time. Get them done, get them out. But that is accomplished in VR better than it is in our traditional meeting, because people will pull out their laptops, pull out their phones, and they're not paying attention anymore. They're doing other things. They're not actually present and attentive in the meeting, right? And when they leave, well, what were they talking about? Who was in charge of that? Who was supposed to do that? That's not the case. We always have, I know exactly who it is. We're ready to go. That's just the way it is in this. So that's one of the bigger benefits that we see. The other one is we record a ton of data. So I'm the engagement lead in the Immersive Design Center. So I'm measuring all kinds of stuff that I picked up. Okay, so types of meetings. Well, this one was a 2D one. We did some 3D. Okay, and we had some customers in the meeting. Okay, well, that's not enough. Did we have engineering in the meeting? What kind of engineering meeting was that? Was that a DFMA, PFMEA? Was it a CDR, PDR? Right, and I can put all this data in here so I can start to find trends in the data, right? And then know if we start to lose some of the customers or our main use cases are starting to lower because of that. We can go and start to talk to those in the bosses and say, hey, how do we get you back in here? We know that you got a lot of benefit out of it, obviously. So how do we get you back in and use this again? So if we're using the data correctly and understanding how we're measuring our ROI, not just in the tangibles, right, but also in the smaller things, it makes a big difference when we try to sell this and try to roll it out to other places.
Yeah, so I think a lot of our applications depend on kind of coalescing talent in one place, in order to execute on something. And so, kind of an interesting, application that's popped up, and this is something that's cool too, is it pops up from any team around the business. Like, I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but I have people from EHS reach out to me. I have people from IT reach out, people from procurement, compliance, all that. And so, like for instance, we've done job hazard analysis for different projects in the manufacturing facilities, virtually in a digital twin. So you can walk through and say, okay, well, this ledge might be an issue, or you have to be careful, for confined space or XYZ. And so I think it's one, are people more engaged than they would traditionally be? Two, it's can you engage them at a distance where they don't have to physically be in the same location? And then three, it's like, can you drive learnings that are different than you would traditionally drive out of an experience where we're all standing together? Because for instance, if I'm standing on the shop floor and I'm looking up at a tank, that's different than being able to fly up and above it and look at it from a top view perspective as well. So we can drive different insights from different experiences. And so that's really kind of our focus is, how do you get people in there and engaged? How do you connect people that can connect, before? And then how do you drive insights that are different than maybe what we could have driven before?
Yeah, from my perspective, I mean, obviously the easiest one is the reduction in travel. I think that's something that a lot of us have seen with our technologies. But kind of feeding off what Dane had mentioned, and then also with Vineet, he had mentioned distractions. So our team, we've been kind of doing our daily stand-ups and just different meetings every single day in virtual reality. Once again, we have a globally dispersed team, so we have people in China, Australia, Canada, you name it. And what we've noticed over time, without putting metrics to it or anything like that, but we've just noticed even during our daily stand-ups, it's no longer a checklist item where people are saying, I did this, and this, and here's my challenge. It's more of a conversation. And the amount of insights that you get from those conversations and deeper dialogue when people are actually connected and plugged in, it's really difficult to actually put tangible metrics and numbers to that. And then feeding off what Dane had said about just the design reviews and those models, very similar at Chevron, where we've had multi-user collaboration and virtual collaboration for design reviews. Being able to, these engineers, they're building out these 3D models on a 2D screen, and yet they're never actually experiencing it in 3D until it's constructed. So placing those people inside of that virtual reality environment so they can actually look at the work that they've done, but then also pulling in the right stakeholders like operations or other people to experience it as well and provide feedback around clashes or issues that they might face before construction. I mean, the benefits have been pretty immense. So that's really great. And then last but not least, I know we're talking about virtual meetings. We had a great conversation last night at dinner, and one of our stakeholders had mentioned, I don't see the value in taking a physical meeting and putting it into VR. I see the value from all the other experiences that you can't do in the physical world. We're fairly new in our journey, so we haven't gotten there yet, but taking that creative approach and really thinking, what can you do differently from a meeting in the physical world? I think that's going to be really, really exciting.
Thank you. Elliot?
Yes. So something that I think that all of us are touching upon at the moment is just like whenever it actually comes into what money are we saving? What are we like? Are we saving on paper? Are we saving on travel? Are we saving on reagents? Are we saving on single-use materials? Are we saving on just even like the cost of holding a meeting, as you were saying earlier? But one of the areas that I've been really enjoying focusing on kind of proving as a very specific method for ROI with XR is kind of focusing on the fact that XR gives us an opportunity to focus on not only like saving on just like not having to use certain things, but also on what we're able to retain. So for example, we've all gone through reorgs. We've all gone through maybe having a technology leader or someone on your team either leaving or being fired or something along those lines. We've all probably been in situations where like someone who had a core like tenet of tribal knowledge for whatever your silo might be in, all of a sudden they're gone and you don't have access to that information anymore. So one of the cool things is that like within pharma, we're working with a lot of folks with PhDs, a lot of folks that like are experts in that very specific thing that they do. And there aren't really any other people in the world that can do that specific thing. They have all the research, they have all the experience with that. If they go somewhere different, what happens to your lab? What happens to just where does that all go? Do you now have a piece of machinery that might have cost you, oh, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million that's just now like sitting in a lab vacant because no one's trained on how to use it and no one knows how to do that training anymore? So like with XR, being that we can take photos, we can take videos, we can like actually go through guided trainings, we can create content that allows us to build libraries and repositories of like specific SME knowledge, not only being able to have SMEs on demand, but being able to just say like, hey, we have legacy content. We have information that was built by people that was like specifically, this is what they do. And now we can give it to whomever we want. We can distribute it. We can take it to scale. We can do whatever we need to it or whatever we need with it, whether or not it's a PAC document, an SOP, anything to just depending on what level of like regulation it's being held to, and you can just distribute it as needed. And like taking that in addition to, again, travel, cost, paper, single-use reagents, etc. It's just been a really cool spot within pharma to be able to focus on saying, hey, not only can we have like immediate return on investment just by saving on materials, but we can also prevent issues from coming up in the future because we can actually retain any and all knowledge that we might need or would lose just due to natural occurrences.
Which is, yeah, and it's great. I think for people in the audience as well, one of the things I'd like to see more is a little bit of an ROI or actual money that has been saved. Okay, and it's a challenge for everybody. It's something that in the area we're very passionate about, is actually getting some real numbers, because funny enough, the bean counters often run the companies and they want to see some sort of return on investment. So a challenge for everybody. The other thing I'd like to challenge you guys and everybody as well is it's okay in your own company to do this kind of collaboration stuff, but actually when you start to do it in your whole supply chain and your design reviews go across all of your providers and things like that, I think that's where we really get the golden egg. You know, you can really cut down that design from end to end, have all the same shared information. I know there's challenges, and we're going to come on to that next, but I think that's when we really see some exciting stuff happening. Okay, enough of show me the money, as Jerry Maguire would say. Barriers. Okay, you've all been through them. We've all been through them, because I know there's plenty of experts here. And there are some of the normal ones, okay, and we'll probably cover those quickly as well. But I'd like, if we can, to challenge you on some of the kind of potentially unique things around this, but also some of the things that you probably didn't think that would happen, okay? Tough questions, I know. I think we're going to start with you, Nick.
Okay, well, I'll start with what you actually started with, about saying, how do you get the technology into the folks who actually haven't invested in anything? So that was one of our challenges. We said, okay, well, we'll buy extra stuff and we'll give it to them and start to put it in the supplier's hands, get them to understand it, get them to feel it, and cut down on travel. This is pre-COVID, right? We were already doing this, but you have to be able to have the buy-in not only from your management to say, yes, I'm going to do that, but also buy-in from the suppliers, right? Because we're in my area without NDAs, we have to say, we'll give you keep out zones. Sorry, you can't see what we're doing, right? So how do we solve those things to get beyond there? You know, we started doing that with visualization with the XR environments, where now we're just streaming pixel data and it's not being saved anywhere. So okay, well, that solves some of that, right? So there's ways to get around it. But the problem that we have specifically in our organization is just the speed to adoption, right? So IT is usually, or DT on our side, that's what we call them now, is set to no, right? So we'll just say, no, that's not going to happen. And it takes a lot to get them to integrate, to even adopt anything. So we have to do pilots. We have to do a lot of research. We have to prove ROI before we have ROI. And we got to get them on board. And it's very specialty. It's a very niche environment, right? Still, it is a very niche environment. And so people don't understand that IT might not actually be the right place to be putting that in their hands. They're going to touch it. It's still computers. It's still whatever. But is it an actual computer? Is it a headset? Is it a mobile device? You know, where does that actually sit? So how do you get those people who are maybe just an AV guy, or just I'm going to plug the computer in for you, to take that technology and work with it, right? Now they have to be trained on it. They have to understand all the barriers to entry, all the security that has to go into the cybersecurity as well. And that becomes a tougher thing. And then when you get into our environment as well, when it's DoD and we have GovCloud problems and on-prem solutions that we have to have, it becomes an extra level of no. So how do we get to that before what we've now spent all the money to get research and development and proven and and it's now obsolete, and we're going to go mothball that thing and start over again.
Sorry to say, guys, but we've got about 4 minutes. Okay.
Quickly.
So go for it.
Yeah. So quickly, I would say a challenge that we have is that, the ecosystem's so fragmented right now. Everybody uses a different visualizer. Everybody uses a different platform to build 3D models and uses different formats and all these things. And so I think part of kind of our roles is to think about that pipeline. So depending on who we work with, how do we take those models, ingest it, be able to visualize it regardless of where it comes from? And I think that's a big challenge in the industry right now. That's my short answer.
That was really good. I like the 3D content management stuff. Okay, I literally have a list of challenges because we have a ton of challenges. But just real quick, a platform to support thousands of users. I know there's platforms out there, but for us, everything that we've evaluated, the things that we've evaluated with the different capabilities needed, we have not found a sustainable solution to support our thousands and thousands of people that we want to bring into one session at a time. Remote desktop. So being able to bring in your why are you laughing at me? Being able to bring in your content, like your PowerPoints, your Excel files, whatever it might be, into those virtual meetings, people feel totally disconnected without it. And so through our pilots and through our experience, we've noticed that if that's not there, then they don't know how to talk to each other without that stuff. And last but not least, cybersecurity. I know you guys have probably heard it through all the other sessions before. We're super lucky. And I guess this is actually not a challenge. It's more of a lessons learned. Where we got, to speak with our cyber leadership team very early on, put them in the headsets, have them experience all of our use cases and walk them through it. And now they're part of our early adopters program. So we have them at the front end helping to get ahead of those other challenges that we foresee coming.
This was my
Go on.
this was my favorite bit, but I'll have to keep it fairly quick. I'll be brutally honest, like we have to get past that wow factor of VR. I've seen like they companies and leadership, they want to deploy VR just because it's cool, and they don't see so it needs to for the end user, it will only make sense when it will fit into their workflow and it's plugged in. Basically it needs to plug in into what they were doing before entering the VR session, and also plug in into what they will do after they are out of that VR session. So it needs to come a full circle so that they can use this technology rather than just being like, oh, this is cool. And then after that, they are like, okay, fine, I don't really need to go in there. And the second thing was that, especially for like desktop-based VR systems today, there is a lot of things the end user has to learn and do to just get into a VR experience, like starting the Steam VR, installing Steam VR, having a Steam account. If you're using an Oculus device, you have like the Oculus SDK installed, Oculus account, Meta, Oculus, I don't know, so many accounts you have to make. And then not even that, then you have to like install all those applications. Oh, then your IT doesn't support all that. You have to make sure that you have to turn off your firewall. Oh, then you finally get into the VR, but it doesn't work on the the internet in the office. You need a special connection. So much of that just to like get into the experience. Yeah, those are the challenges.
Elliot, go on.
I will keep it again. I'll keep it super short. International procurement, GMP/GXP, and actually making sure that anytime that you're bringing in any of this new technology, that the people that are using it, who maybe have never touched it before, feel comfortable doing so. It's a super cool thing, but there are a lot of folks that don't want to touch certain bits of tech just because they don't want to break it. Making sure that they feel not only empowered, but making sure that they feel comfortable to take on any kind of change that we're bringing to an organization is usually one of the best ways to make sure that we guarantee that they continue to use it and enjoy the products at the same time.
Perfect. There's been some great questions. Some of them I think we've answered. A couple of the ones I quite like. In your opinion, are there particular use case? Oh, no, we've covered that. Are there particular use cases that lend themselves to collaboration? I think we've covered that one. What, in your opinion, is a successful virtual or remote collaboration meeting? I think we've covered that in terms of measuring and making sure that everyone's engaged and stuff like that. Are they using it more regularly? I think the answer is yes, definitely. I think others are, how many hours a week do you participate in meetings using XR collaborations? Let's just run through quickly. How many hours a week?
Gosh, I don't know. My specific team, we use it every single day.
Perfect. Dane?
Yes, the same.
All day, every day.
1 hour a week. Like we do our stand-ups in VR, that's all for now for me. But yeah.
12 to 15, not including demos.
12 to 15 hours?
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's it. We probably could take one question real quick. If someone had a question burning. Right, hang on a second.
you. Sure. Absolutely.
Repeat the question. Thank you, sir.
So Dave Doan at Genentech. We play around with a couple of VR applications and testing them, using them for one-on-ones. Haven't found that perfect one. Have you guys found one that fits all the requirements and supports? I'm thinking about building my own. I mean, to some extent, we looked at Verbella. We use Horizon just for smaller meetings. They all have the pros and cons, but we're just looking for that one that does it all.
Real quick then, perfect collaboration platform.
Can we
Go.
say no in unison? I mean, I think there's some really exciting, platforms that'll be coming out in the next, 6 months to a year. But also, the way that our perspective on it is, let's understand where this drives a lot of value at the current state, and then grow with the technology as it gets better and faster and lighter and all those things. But I would also say, like, we've all been in your shoes where it's like, maybe I should just build this because, like, and it. One thing I would caution you is that that's hard. It's more difficult than you might think to build and support.
Yeah, I've tried a plenty of applications. I would tell you that all of those applications are great, like the interactions, and they are fit for like different use cases as well. But the only thing they are missing is that, as I said in my earlier point, I need them to connect with the things I do outside VR as well, the applications I work on outside VR. So if I go in, I do something, I should be able to get it out and use in my other applications. So that's the missing link, I would say is.
That's a great point. Last comment, because I'm going to get
Last
told
comment,
off.
yeah.
I'm only here to keep you on time, and I've done that. I've done that.
I was gonna say no as well. I think when you're looking at different platforms, I agree. I think there's gonna be some really cool things coming out in the next 1 to 2 years, but making sure that things are working together and they're interoperable, it's just not, it doesn't exist yet. We don't have all these applications that talk to one another just yet. Metaverse is cool.
You said the M word. Careful. To be perfectly honest with you, you specifically said VR. The most success that we've had in regards to virtual meetings has not specifically been VR. It's been more of the XR. What would you call it? Remote assist. That's probably the main one that we've been using. Just to be as honest as possible for you.
Perfect. I do need to stop it there. Thank you very much, audience. Thank you very much, panelists.